Hello! It's been a while. As always, I'm doing readings. Feel free to book a reading with me in the website in the About section of this video. I love doing readings. I've done them for over a decade. So don't hesitate if you'd like to do a reading, if you'd like to talk about anything. Where to begin? There's so much to talk about. I think the big thing is Mercury is in Leo and Mars is in Virgo opposite Saturn. This is, even though we've had both of these transits for a couple days, just in the very beginning of this transit already, it's such a stark, dramatic, seismic shift from where we've been for the last several weeks. And as always, that's neither good nor bad, it just is what it is. The last several weeks, which I've been meaning to do a transit video, but it's just that it just hasn't, it wasn't the right time. We had Sun and Mercury in Cancer, and we were focused on introspective, we were focused on a lot of family stuff, maybe family challenges. A lot of people were experiencing that, or reestablishing boundaries in terms of family, figuring out self in relation to past and childhood. And the reason I bring this up is not just because of the past, but also that's part of where we are right now as well, but it's a little bit of a different situation. So now Mercury is less introspective and more and less focused on what's going on within in the past, and more focused on right now in the present. I guess you could say the future too, but it's more so like right now in the present. With Mercury being in Leo, I always think of Mercury Leo as like, out of all of the Mercury energies, which is, what is Mercury, right? Communication, how we think, how we process information, how we communicate this information to other people, excuse me, and also how we process information in terms of hearing, how we hear information. So all of our minds have this direct connection of the mind to the heart. That's what I always think of with Mercury Leo. And as always, it's neither good nor bad. As with every single energy, there's beautiful gifts with that, and there are challenges as well. So the beautiful gift of that is all of our minds are more childlike in the best possible way than usual. And again, I mean this in the best possible way because we all have our inner child. I have a lot of Leo natally, and I love how that energy has really kept me sane and focused throughout my life, of being able to just stay true to myself and have a playful spirit and a fun spirit, and not lose that to the years of living on this planet, as so many people do who don't have a lot of fire energy. And especially Leo, the fixed fire energy, is so stubborn, right? So that's a great thing. It's stubborn in a positive sense. Again, there's challenges, we'll get to that, but in a positive sense, it's very stubborn about, no, this is what's right. Again, it's a connection between the heart, especially because with it being Mercury Leo, there's a connection between the heart and the mind at this time that is very refreshing, especially from what we've been dealing with for the last several weeks, where it's much more, that transit was much more, again, introspective, kind of wading through things. It could be very decisive, but it's a cardinal energy. And so with Mercury now shifting into fixed fire, it's more focused, it's more direct. And again, it's a beautiful thing where it's like we can get back to that, children, what was that saying, like out of the mouths of babes, right? It's like children are just so honest, so direct, because they don't think that, it's just natural for them to. And again, sometimes it can be like, oh God, they just said that was really hurtful or whatever. And we need to watch out for that with this. We'll get into that. But the positive sense is our minds are very much like on fire at this time. It's almost like there's pure sunlight going on in our brains, in terms of what we focus on and how does that make us feel, right? So we're just clear. I like this. I don't like that. I like this person. I don't like that person. And again, we don't want to, and here's a bit of the challenge. We don't want to be petty with this. We don't want to be the 2-year-old, and that's true of any fire energy. We don't want to be the temper tantrum inner child, the brat, right? We need to be mindful of this. We need to be mindful of not just seeing things from our own perspective, being able to calmly, rationally, not let our egos overtake our thought processes, and especially our communications with other people. That's the big challenge at this time, because it's very easy for this energy in particular. It's known as a rough energy. It can really struggle to see things logically and clearly. And over the last 24 hours, I had this experience where it's like I had a truth and I need to speak it. And again, the family element is very rich at this time because Sun is still in Cancer for another 10 days. Venus is in Leo. Leo and Cancer both are all about our family. And there's a big focal point on that still. Even with Mars having moved out of Leo, there's still a lot of focus there. It's not necessarily everything in our world right now. We'll get into that, where there might be other elements that are very deeply challenging because transiting Mars is opposite transiting Saturn. We'll get into that in depth. But so much of what we're focused on and so much of what is making up what's going on in our lives and what's going on in our mind certainly has to do with family at this time. And again, and this also has to do with people in general. But again, we need to be, it's tricky because there's a fine line here. We want to make sure that we're staying true to ourselves and that we are speaking our truth and we're not burying things. We're again being like a child and saying what needs to be said. But again, in the last even 24 hours, I had this experience where it's like that was very much happening. And by the way, the way to get through that, to make sure you don't go just too, this is what I think and this is how it is, and nothing else is mattering right now, or nobody else's perspectives count. The key for that is just to breathe and center, meditate, ground. And I really had to sort through that for myself in the last 24 hours, where it's like, am I going to say something? No, don't say something. Time goes by, I have to say something. I can't not say something. This is killing me. This needs to be said. They need to understand. There needs to be this communication. Okay, well, how am I going to say it? What needs to be said? Try and look at it from their perspective, right? If you keep this in balance, this can be incredible. And I think that's really the great gift of Mercury Leo. Is a lot of people don't necessarily know this about this energy. Well, I guess a lot of people do know this as well. But some people miss out on Mercury Leo because it can be a very dramatic energy. It can be too dramatic, too, etc. Very much so. But the other side of it is so heartfelt. Again, there's a direct connection between the mind and the heart. And like every energy, it has its challenges of ego, temper tantrum, potential, etc. But there's also the beautiful, like, other people are warmed by those people who have that energy all year round. And we're all kind of putting on this hat or this mask, however you want to put it, where our brains are working like this from a transiting perspective. We always have our natal energies, but we're all kind of putting on the Mercury Leo hat. We don't have a choice of every single energy. It's like a lens, if you will. And if we bring our best heartfelt emotions to the table and we don't just go, oh, woe is me, it's just my perspective. Like we need to stop the drama. We need to put drama to the side and be seeking to be truthful, say how we feel, but focus on reconciliation and recognizing that there are other people in this world and not just ourselves. Because that energy can get a little bit caught up in, think about it, it's the sun energy and it's Mercury, how we think. The sun is the center of our solar system. And it plays a huge role, but it's not just the sun and the solar system, right? So for all of us, we need to be mindful this time. It's not just us. It's not just our perspectives. We need to consider other people's perspectives. We need to make space in the conversation. We need to be respectful. We need to be polite. We need to be free of the drama. That is essential at this time. Why this is all the more essential is because all of us are experiencing so much pressure right now. Whether it's an internal pressure or an external pressure or both, we all have transiting Mars opposite transiting Saturn. And this is deeply, deeply challenging. From what I was experiencing the last day, that was a big part of it. And I'm born with natal Mars opposite natal Saturn. So I know what this is like. Patience is essential. Okay, hold on. Let's talk about what is this transit. So Mars, the planet of movement, action, accomplishment, but that's a little bit more Saturn. More so like this, the raw motivation, right? Raw action is opposite Saturn. What is Saturn? More so the accomplishment, long-term goals, growth of purpose, building, accumulating on every level. I mean, you could look at it from financial possession, but I think even more importantly, Saturn is focused on building skills, building wisdom, building character, building, again, a sense of purpose. When things are opposite, they tend to struggle. Because if you look at it from, a practical perspective, you have the Earth at this time, right? It's revolving around the sun over here. Saturn is over here. Mars is over here. here's the Earth, pulling in two different directions. Now, this is great. Like every transit, there's gifts. This is great for a lot of reasons. We'll get into that. But we have to get through the challenge first, which is, what is this challenge? Feeling thwarted, feeling stuck, feeling lacking vision, lacking focus. I think a lot of it is not necessarily lacking the vision. I think a lot of it is feeling like, how do I get there? Maybe I can't get there. Depression, right? Or feeling down, feeling stuck, feeling very frustrated. What is a possible reaction, which we all need to be mindful of and recognize that this is not an excuse to act this way, but this is a possible thing that we all need to be mindful of, so that we can, again, breathe like with every transit and just figure out, how do we get through this and in the best way possible? How do we mitigate the challenges, right? A possible challenge at this time with this energy is anger, frustration, impatience, lashing out, self-destruction as well as destruction. I think those are the big themes here, the big challenges. We'll get into the positives in a moment, because really we have to get through these challenges to get to the positives, like with every Saturn transit. We've been dealing, a little bit of empathy here for all of us. We've been dealing with a year that has been very stop and start. We started out the year with retrogrades, Mars and Mercury. We got to March. Cool, we're moving forward. April, very cool, moving forward. May, Mercury retrograde and conjunct Uranus. It's not like retrogrades are bad, they're certainly not. But these transits have hit us really hard in some form or another throughout our lives. And again, everybody has their own path. I'm not trying to say like, oh, everybody's had a hard year, but everybody has been dealing with difficult elements. And even if things are overall good, we're all going to be, again, feeling some kind of pressure at this time. And internal and or external, and I really think you can't get around it. It's probably inner and external pressure. And this is just the beginning, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing. One second. This is just the beginning, which is the hardest part with any Saturn transit, because Saturn makes us feel kind of like hopeless. It can make us feel hopeless or helpless in terms of vast stretches of time. Oh, I haven't done this, or oh, I have so much to do. I think those are the two big ones with Saturn. And the beauty is Mars is there for 6 weeks. That's a long time. And there's the positive. Let's focus on the positive. But that negative is really essential to understand and work through, because otherwise we're not going to understand how to access the positive, and we're going to be toxically positive, pretending this kind of pressure and challenge doesn't exist. The positive, though, is we're able to build and work so hard at this time and be very formative. Our actions can be very formative and help us to move forward and to build tremendously at this time. So I think, speaking from personal experience, having this natally, sometimes especially if you're experiencing this externally, but really from an internal perspective as well, sometimes this kind of transit is just rough. It's just frustrating. Especially when other people are trying to block you or whatever. But either way, whether you're experiencing somebody trying to block you or you kind of blocking yourself during this time, it is so essential to stay rooted, to breathe, again, to stay grounded, to stay compassionate for yourself, to stay empathetic for yourself, and compassionate, empathetic for what other people are going through, because everybody's going through this in some form or another throughout their lives. Even if it seems like everything's great on the surface, we're all feeling this kind of pressure. There's always room for improvement, and Mars and Saturn are all about focusing on that improvement. So we're all focused on something that's lacking at this time, because that's generally what Virgo energy focuses on, because it's very good at it. What needs to be fixed? What needs to be preserved? What do we need to maintain? What isn't there that needs to be there, right? It's more focused on like change the net deficit to a net neutral, and then hopefully net positive. But that's not really, positive is a little bit more the Gemini energy rather than Virgo. And to be fair, we can kind of take a note from that. Let's not focus too much on all the stuff that needs to be done, what's not there, etc. We do need to bring in some levity. The next couple of days, today and tomorrow, with Moon and Gemini, the first part of Saturday, is helpful with that, to remind us to not be so hard on ourselves, to not overthink things, to not get so tightly wound up. I took an hour today to just stretch, because I've been working so hard lately and been dealing with some pressures Who would have thought? The Saturn opposite Mars transit. And also, again, that Mars in Virgo, how we handle it is also going to help us tremendously to be able to guide our Mercury energies right now, of whether we're looking on the positive when we're speaking very grounded, and even if we're saying things other people don't want to hear, it's still of a positive, loving nature. We're not just being dramatic and trying to burn things wildly and not hear other people's perspectives, etc. If we are too hard on ourselves, if we do stress out, if we are overthinking, right? And we'll get into that. There's some things that could be really helpful with this. It's not like it's just like, oh, this is our fault. No, it's not what I'm saying. But it is incumbent upon us as individuals always of how are we going to react to things. And part of that is certain things that we can do that we'll focus on in a moment. But so much of it too is our self-care. Especially with Mars opposite Saturn. Are we going for walks? Are we getting enough sunlight? Are we sleeping enough? Are we eating healthily? Are we drinking water? Are we working out regularly? These things matter during any time, and especially during the time like this. Because again, so much of the stress that I was experiencing in the last 24 hours, which again, part of it was Mercury Leo, but a huge part of it was Mars opposite Saturn. I hadn't even thought of it until a couple hours ago. So much of that was I just needed to stretch. I mean, it was a genuinely frustrating situation that needed to be handled and whatnot. And again, I grounded myself, so I feel good about it. But so there's part of it is like, no, there are conflicts that need to be resolved. We'll get into that. But part of it is also, are we being clear though? Are we adding to the conflict? Are we handling it the best way that we could? And that is where the Mars and Virgo energy of, okay, let's focus on the body. Let's focus on the breath. Let's keep our mental process positive. We don't need to be kidding ourselves like, okay, this is challenging, or I have a lot to do or whatever, but okay, I'll get to it. And again, this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. I have 6 weeks with this transit, one step at a time. And also there's time after that. There's always time. This is just a kind of a crucial check-in point to see where have we been basically for the last year. Actually, it's not a strict timeline, but about a year Mars and Saturn were conjunct. So about a year ago. That's what I'm trying to say. So this is a time kind of a check-in. Okay, how have we grown? How have we expanded? And what haven't we, or what do we still need to do? And the year will continue for the next year, or even like maybe 14 months, something like that. The timeline doesn't really matter, but think about roughly a year, right? So focus and congratulate yourself. I know it sounds silly, but congratulate yourself on what you have done and on your progress. Again, don't focus too much on what needs to be done, so you'll stress yourself out. Just focus on what needs to be done, but in a positive spirit of things. And use these words as a reminder, so if you do find yourself kind of slipping, positive, practical, down to earth, grounded, common sense, but positive. We don't want to be, there's no need to torture ourselves while we're seeking to get all these little details right in our lives. I read a really good quote that applies directly to this. It's like, don't fault yourself for what you didn't know before you actually came to know it. Right? Like, don't beat yourself up for what you haven't built yet, because all of us are looking at something in our lives and going, why haven't I done this? And look at this year. We've had a year of stop and starts. We've had a year of, especially for the last several weeks, and it feels like months, because going back into May too with Mercury retrograde, we've had several months of deep introspection. Like, yeah, we had a time period where Mercury is Gemini, and that was kind of flowing forward and more of the positive, upbeat, etc., especially mentality wise. But we have had so much energy that's been more introverted, more introspective, which has been fantastic. It's been great. So much inner growth, so much inner reflection and understanding, insights. So don't fault yourself for not being where you want to be, or where you expect to be, or where you feel you need to be, because that's natural for all of us. We don't get to control. Trust me, take it from me, who have studied this for over a decade. Excuse me. And have tried to, I mean, on the one hand, it's good to try to make the most of your transits, of the transits that are happening to reach your goals, right? On the other hand, you can fall into the trap that I did for years, even roughly a decade, of like, okay, these are my goals, and I'm going to reach it with this transit. And just like torturing yourself for not reaching certain goals with certain transits, because We don't get to control the river of life. We go through the flow of things, and if we don't take care of our body, our mind, our heart, our spirit, if we don't take care of ourselves as we're going through all these random seemingly detours of learning this and experiencing that, and dating so and so, and whatever the experience might be, we are living, and it's not an exact thing, and we can't be like machines where it's like, I'm going to do this by that time for sure. We can definitely set the intention of, I'm going to do my best to get this thing to that place at that time. That's okay. That's great. We need to do that. We do need to be diligent and set goals for ourselves in life, for sure. But we're not machines, and we're not meant to be machines. And torturing ourselves for not being machines is a very likely thing for all of us at this time, and I experienced this. It was a big part of my frustration yesterday. Other people expecting us to be machines is part of the frustration too, and that's the other thing with Mars opposite Saturn, that the external. So that's more the internal. But again, I just want to wrap that up with a bow with the internal of just breathe, be patient, set reasonable expectations, and again, more focus on the practical steps rather than the result, the destination. Because that's another thing. Mars in Virgo is a perfectionist energy. It loves to overthink things, and it's like, oh my God, stresses you out to, like, I gotta get it perfect, gotta get to that place. Put that to the side. What are we doing today to make it better? What is our goal for today? Oh, I can do that little bit. Cool. And then that little bit adds to another little bit, and then it just all of a sudden you've done so much without even thinking about it. That is how you tap into this energy. Dare I say, have fun with it, enjoy it, right? With that Mercury Leo, the Venus in Leo, enjoy it. Find a way so that you can enjoy it. And the other part of this, and this is also part of how to find a way to enjoy it, is setting boundaries with other people. I think especially when it comes to anxiety, this is a big challenge for me in this last day. Mercury is in Leo, like we talked about. Venus is in Leo. Venus will continue to be in Leo for months. We'll get into that, not so much for today, but in the coming weeks. Mars is still on the cusp of Leo, for that matter. What does this all mean? But especially Mercury Leo, we're focused on ourselves. It's like mind to our own heart. Right now, we can know very clearly, very quickly, generally speaking. I mean, depending on the person's chart, but like overall, very clearly, very quickly, this is what I am, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm feeling. Again, I like this, I don't like this, etc. We're meant to be clear about it. It's very easy then for other people. I think this has a lot to do with work situations, but this really could go for everything. Again, family is a big part of this as well because of all this Cancer in Leo. Other people can be so focused on their own thing, Mercury Leo, and that's okay. But then it kind of like it bleeds over into where you are. We're all very sensitive at this time with Mars opposite Saturn. Boundaries can be really tricky at this time because Saturn's in Pisces. And again, we want to be grounded with this. Again, we don't want to just pop off and be dramatic and whatever. But there is a very real need for every single one of us as individuals on this planet to make sure we're setting our boundaries with other people efficiently so that we're not burning anybody by setting those boundaries, but also we're being very clear about, I don't like this, or I can't do all of this, or, please don't treat me in this particular way. Please don't say that to me. Please don't do that to me, etc. Because if we don't, we're just going to be a sponge for all sorts of unnecessary suffering. We all need to set boundaries in life, and it can be tricky, especially with a transit like this, where we're taking it upon ourselves with this Mars and Virgo energy, and the Mercury Leo too. Like, we care deeply, we don't want to let other people down, and the Mars and Virgo, like, I should be efficient, I should be effective, I should be able to do this. But we all have limits, and we all, as human beings, like, we have to honor time, and that's a huge part of the frustration at this time. Is a lot of people are going to feel anxiety, like, I need to get this done by this time. And if you're working with that person, or you're around a person like that, or especially if that person is like a boss in some way for you and they have expectations of you, don't torture yourself by pretending to do things that you can't do. And that's not a failure on your part by saying, I can't do this, or I can't work this way, this isn't helpful, or this isn't a good way for all of this to flow, to function, I'm stressed out, please don't do that, etc. We are human, we need to communicate these things, and it's so easy at this time for people to not hear that or just not focus on that unless you tell them, because Mercury's in Leo. We're very much focused on our own mind and heart. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But that's the thing, is each one of us has to figure out, okay, what's going on here? And let it out. Let people hear you. And again, we want to be grounded. We want to breathe. We want to make sure we're very clear about what we're trying to say, because sometimes Mercury Leo can be dramatic and not very clear, like logically. So we need to make sure that we are, of course, every energy can be logical and clear, but this is an energy where we have to kind of work through of like, okay, what am I really upset about? Am I frustrated about that? You know, a big thing here too is sexual frustration. Mars opposite Saturn is a transit of, oh, I'm not experiencing enough sex, or maybe there's some difficulties in my sex life if I do have a partner in my life right now, or whatever. And you know, that can be frustrating too, and that can bleed over into our interactions with other people. So we want to be very clear with ourselves first and foremost. Like, yes, be true to yourself, say what you need to say, but also like be diligent with yourself too. Make sure you're not being a brat. You know, make sure, like, is this person really like deserve all of this energy that you're putting at them when you communicate to them, or are you just like, I don't know, you need to masturbate more or something, you know what I mean? It's like, make sure you're very clear about what is going on, what is fueling your thoughts and your frustrations in life, and then again focus on how you can relieve that in your own positive, productive way, so that you can then communicate with other people. And again, we come back to the self-care when it comes to Mars and Virgo with food, exercise, sunlight, water, stretching, meditation. Do these things as well. I mean, always, but especially at this time. And that will help you to clear up, what do I need to say? How do I need to say it? How much energy? Because our communications are kind of full of life at this time, and that's not a bad thing. You just want to make sure it's full of the kind of the good life, right? That's a weird way of putting it, but like good fire where it's warming, it's still fun, it doesn't take itself too seriously, instead of just exploding and then burning down villages. You know, it's like, no, let's do the first, because ultimately we all get burned, even in the moment when it's like, oh, it feels good to just blah. We all get burned at the end of the day. And that also burns relationships. You can't take back a burn. You cannot take it back. There's nothing that can take that back, ever. So that's really important to keep in mind, having fire energy wherever it is in our chart, and especially at a time like this, because it's so easy right now. It's so easy to be dramatic in our communication with others and to burn. But at some point, well, first, burns can also spiral out of control and become wildfires, and unexpected things can happen. And again, everybody suffers in that situation. So there's so much to gain from staying cool and collected while still speaking our truth, and just being very clear about what's going on in our life. What are we frustrated about? What are we working on? What are some good ways to handle that, or to approach what we're working on, and make sure that we don't have unrealistic expectations, so that we're not stressing ourselves out. Let's keep everything fun. Yes, we're focused on our goals, and that's great. Yes, we're being practical. Yes, one last thing. Yes, we're all learning too. That's a big thing about this time as well. Mars, and this is actually some nice stuff that's really helpful. Okay, we're going to talk about this next thing again. I'll reprise it in the next video because it's really important. But this is really important. And if you're still hanging on, that's awesome that you're still here. But yeah, Mars is in Virgo, trining. This is some, you know, we've had a lot of stressful aspects and difficulties. Well, this is some stuff that is really lovely. Except for Taurus with Leo, which is why we focus so much on the Leo at the first part of this. But Mars being trine Jupiter and Taurus, and Uranus and Taurus. So let's focus on the Mars, then we'll get into that little bit that we'll talk more about next time. We're able to grow at this time. We're able to learn. That's another great thing about Mars and Virgo. It's very effective for long-term learning, building layer upon layer of knowledge and practical experience and skill. And with it being trine Jupiter and Taurus, this is wonderful. So that's a good way to look at it. It's like, okay, not so much, oh, what do I have to do? I have so much to do. But like, okay, what am I learning? How am I growing? How am I getting stronger? How, you know, and again, physically, sure, but we're talking mentally and emotionally as well, you know, professionally. Because Jupiter has so much to do with our skills in life, which a lot of it is professional, it's life as well. But I think a lot of it has to do more with the professional, especially with Saturn being opposite Mars and sextile Jupiter. So this is a good time to focus on, okay, what can I control? Okay, what my skills, my training, my practice, right? So there's that. Now, the thing I want to talk about, and we'll talk about more next time, is Uranus and Jupiter both being in Taurus. This is awesome. This is really cool. This is going on for about a year, almost exactly, a little bit less than a year. And for all of us, we're experiencing this conjunction in some part of our chart. Wherever that is, we are talking, and okay, I just want to say, a lot of astrologers tend to go, oh my God, and lose their shit over every little thing, especially eclipses and whatnot. I am a very scientifically minded astrologer. I have so much Aquarius energy, especially Sun and Mercury in the house of Aquarius, let alone the Sun and Mercury in Gemini. So it takes a lot for me to get really like worked up, and it's not the Mercury Leo either. It's not that. Uranus and Jupiter being conjunct is very cool. I don't know exactly how many years, like how many, like, so it happens for a year every, I want to say like 14 years, maybe. I could be off by a couple years, maybe like 15, 16 years. I don't know. But that's a big deal. Jupiter and Uranus are the two of the three largest planets in our solar system. Jupiter, of course, being the first, Uranus being the third. I think Uranus is larger than Neptune. I don't know. They're very similar. Doesn't matter. Long story short, here on this planet, Jupiter and Uranus are lining up. And we're all experiencing it in Taurus, of course, that region of space known as Taurus. But we're all experiencing a particular house in our chart. And this is really important for us to know where it is in our chart. And that might sound difficult. It's really not. I understand if it does. That's okay. It's normal. It's a lot of information in natal chart when you first get it. But if you just look at your chart with the equal house system, the house system that I always utilize also for scientific reasons, look at where Taurus is in your chart with equal house system again, because Placidus can shift it around a little bit. The rising is a sign for, the rising energy degree is the same for both systems, but the houses can alter a little with Placidus. And again, equal is more accurate from my perspective after a decade of study. For scientific reasons, yada, yada, yada. Anyways, long story short, Jupiter is at 11 degrees Taurus right now, Uranus is at 22. I think it's really important to look at the later degrees of Taurus, so basically 15 to the end of Taurus, and to be looking at that part of your chart. Because this conjunction is leaps and bounds evolution. Uranus, evolution, like lightning, being able to do things you couldn't do before, information coming to you that changes your life completely, any kind of sudden shift in a positive sense. That is what this is about. Jupiter especially adding a lot of benefit to this, where it's just expanding, like whole new worlds is playing in my head. Oh, new worlds. Like it really is that kind of magical, wonderful, and goosebumps. It's like Jupiter and Uranus conjunct, doors open almost like to another dimension that you didn't even know was possible. That's the kind of vibe that we're dealing with over this next year. And wherever it is in your chart, that is where it's like, holy shit. It almost feels silly during times like this. And again, it's a year-long process, so it'll take time for it to fully develop and blossom and bear fruit. But that being said, it's Jupiter and Uranus, like the two fastest astronomical bodies, arguably Mercury and Mars as well in their own way, but like in the massive scheme of things, like the outer planets mean the biggest growth, like these two outer planets mean the biggest growth in a very short amount of time. So again, don't take shortcuts. I'm not trying to say that, or like, get rich quick schemes. No, never. That shit is not the best way ever. Jupiter and Uranus are about, you've been on this path, and Mars and Saturn, this is a good thing. Mars and Saturn, a good thing to keep in mind, Mars and Saturn are opposite each other. So it's like, frustration. We have no idea how close we are to massive leaps forward for what is meant for us. So if we are on the right path where it's like, yeah, I love this, I don't know how I'm going to get there or how I'm going to accomplish this or whatever, just keep at it. And again, for the next 6 weeks, yes, the little details grow, work at them, but learn too. So much of this has to do with learning, because Jupiter and Uranus are about information in a kind of a broader sense, more of like a information that changes your life rather than like information that is, it overlaps, but it's more so like, oh, you learned how to do this skill, or you got really good at the skill and it opens up brand new worlds for you. Or again, it can vary. It's going to be specific to the particular house in our chart, but the big thing is seismic shift in a positive direction that changes your life forever, that creates a new foundation, because it's Taurus energy, so it's solid, creates a new foundation. So stay focused on that. We'll talk more about that as time goes on, but that's kind of the gist of that and what we can focus on for the near future of growing that. And that can help with the frustration, with any impatiences that you feel right now, is just keep at it. You can, it feels like you're going like this, or maybe you're even in a swamp, or maybe you're upside down going backwards or something, right? But if you seek to be clear about what is important to you and what you need to focus on, and you just keep at it, it's like you're going day by day, bam, and then all of a sudden you're there, or bam, you're in a whole other dimension of like possibilities. It's incredible. Again, I don't lose my shit ever, but this is one of those things that is really cool and that we need to be paying attention to be able to consciously being expanding its influence in our lives in a very positive way. And I didn't mean to say all that as a plug. I'm first and foremost, I care about people. I'm just giving information. I'm not trying to always, but I'm also a human being. I need to eat and pay rent and shit. So I am, a businessman in that respect as well. And if you would like, some more information about how this relates to you and your chart, then please book a reading and we can definitely check into that. So in the about section of this video is my website, information of how to book a reading, etc. I think that's really it. It's been a long time, so it's a long video. Infinite love to you, my friends. Namaste. Peace.